And we're live. Hello,
Nice.
everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Great to be on yet another Octant Epoch 12 live stream. We've been doing this daily, so it's been pretty cool. Love to chat
Nico,
with
I cannot
everybody.
open X, and you are always doing a live stream. It's actually quite crazy. And I was asking myself, how many of these you actually did in the past? It's crazy. Well done, well
Yeah,
done.
and I'm asking myself, how bored are people of my face? But that's why I'm bringing also
It's
amazing
good.
co-hosts here, so that people are
Yeah,
not extremely bored of my face. So excited
it's
to
all
have you
good.
here, Francesco.
No, thanks, Nico. Thanks, Nico. It's a pleasure to be here and actually co-hosting this session. I mean, the AI avatar are not that, authentic. I prefer having a Nico co-hosting those live stream with like great builders and kind of discussion. And I really like the idea also bringing those different kind of co-hosts to spice up the conversation. I think it's actually a good, strong idea. And I'm excited to actually speak about general like AI on steroid. And yeah, let's do it. I would say let's jump in.
Yeah, exactly. So I see people starting to join in the live stream. These live streams we are organizing with Octant are because we have a funding round currently running. It's Epoch 12, and we have a few amazing projects, many Ethereum related, but also not. I invite you to check them out. And well, the first day, that was last Wednesday, we did a demo day where each of them could present themselves for 5 minutes. And now we get to chat with them on a deeper basis so that we understand their thinking and like with relevant topics that involve their projects. So yeah, super excited to chat. I'm Nico. I'm the ecosystem lead at Octant, and I'm here with Francesco with
Francesco.
MetaMask. If you want to give
Nice.
a quick intro about yourself, and then we bring up the
Of
guests.
course. Thanks, Nico. Yeah, I'm Francesco. I'm leading developer relation at Consensys. That's the mother company of MetaMask. And yeah, I'm just pushing a lot of different cool activation those days. A couple of weeks ago, we also launched an early access program for MetaMask Agent Kit. So everything that you can do with agent, including like, perps, transactions, pops. So everything, but the cool stuff is that every builder also can actually have access to those kind of like agent interface, meaning you can actually like build skills and different things. But I've been around for quite a while. I'm passionate about everything developer relation and builder focus discussion, especially in this kind of market where we are right now. There is a lot of like good building discussion, and I'm excited to just bring this kind of like AI on steroid kind of narrative. I think definitely like we are in an era where the road to MVP, the hello world is down to kind of like I would say a couple of hours, and distribution matter a lot. And excited to have actually like joining us a very strong speaker and caliber in this ecosystem. So thanks again, Nico and the Octant team for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for joining. It's going to be a super exciting chat. I don't think there was anyone better to bring up today and chat about this. So without further ado, let's bring up our amazing guests here. We have Friederike from Gnosis and EEZ. EEZ is the one that is currently being funded at Octant. We have Andrew from Remix. We have Jacob from Solidity or Argo Collective, and Bryce from EAS, Ethereum Attestation Service. Great to have you all here. How are you doing?
Hey.
Nice to meet everyone.
Hey.
Sweet. So let's start straight away with a quick round of introductions. Please, Friederike, if you can start introducing yourself and EZ.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Friederike. I'm the co-founder of Gnosis. We have built a lot of infrastructure in this space in the past 12 years now. So we built the conditional token framework that underpins Polymarket. We built the Safe, CowSwap, Gnosis Chain, Gnosis Pay, and so on. The thing that we got the Octant grant for is a public goods project called Ethereum Economic Zone, or EZ. And what it does is it makes the different networks that now compose the Ethereum sphere composable again. So kind of if you think back to 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, kind of everything that kind of we built on Ethereum kind of it could compose with everything else that we had. So kind of we got this beautiful money Lego, but actually everything else Lego too kind of situation. And that broke when we started scaling via L2s. Obviously scaling, not scaling was not an option. So kind of at that point, kind of like your average 100,000 gas transaction kind of ran you between 10 and 50 bucks. So obviously that was not a sustainable situation. That has come down a lot again. So kind of currently we pay way less than $1 again. So 20 cents or 10 cents, given kind of depending on the day. But kind of now we have these varying networks that don't speak with each other as well as they should. And the Ethereum Economic Zone leverages real-time proving to kind of make Ethereum one network again, where kind of everything can compose with one another, very much in the sense that kind of like a smart contract on one network can call a smart contract on a different network, get a response in the same block, and use that response in the same block. So kind of, and in principle, you can do it an arbitrary number of times across all of the different networks in the Ethereum Economic Zone. So we demoed this for the first time in Cannes at ECC, and everyone, despite being initially skeptical, everyone ended up loving it, because I mean, to be fair, it's not the first time someone said, okay, we solved INTOP, right? Kind of, but this really does solve INTOP, and people were quick to understand this. So kind of, there's currently a testnet live. The mainnet contracts will be done by end of August, and Gnosis chain will move into the Ethereum Economic Zone by end of year. So that kind of, in a limited fashion, kind of it's a stepwise process, but we will have full shared liquidity with Ethereum by end of year. Kind of nice. Nested calls, so kind of like back and forth calls that go several layers deep. Kind of this will come next year, but kind of at this point in time, this is what gets you 80% of the upside. Nice. It's an extremely unopinionated stack. Okay, so kind of like as a network to join, you only have to have a well-defined state transition function. Any blockchain really does. Secondly, you need to be able and willing to prove yourself in real time, which is an engineering thing, and kind of we're providing a real-time proving stack that you can use. And the third thing is you need to acknowledge that Ethereum is the lead chain. So kind of if Ethereum reorgs, you need to potentially reorg with it. Technically, all L2s should be able to do this. Practically, some of them are not, but kind of acknowledging kind of Ethereum as the credibly neutral chain on which everyone else settles. This is kind of the key component here. And then kind of we get back what we lost, and we are very happy for Octant to see this and co-funded with us and the Ethereum Foundation and a couple of others.
Oh, thanks, Friederike. I think one thing that was very excited was back in Cannes when you guys launched. I remember Jordan in the panel. He was actually very excited around the kind of the launch, and I'm excited to also hear more around kind of like interoperability plans. I think like abstracting the way also on the user side is extremely important, especially when we're coming like with new waves of like user on onboarding. But let's move a bit. So Bryce, you want to quickly introduce yourself, Ethereum attestation stories, anything attestation in the IDs. Let's do it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Nico. Thanks, Francesco. Pleasure to be here. Excited to talk about all things Ethereum and just AI in general, and just like how the developer workflows are improving. But then what that practically means, like in today's world, I think there's a lot of myths that are out there, and a lot of positive things, and a lot of like uncertainty. And so, as builders right now, I think it's really good to just share what's working, what's not, and how we can all build better and faster together. I'm the founding contributor, one of them, to Ethereum attestation service, so attest.org. Essentially, it's just a simple way to structure and sign data to produce verifiable data that has been signed with a wallet. And we've been around for over 3 years, almost 4 years now. So 10 million attestations have been signed by nearly 500,000 different attesters. And we've built it as an open source public good. So anyone can bring whatever schema that they want, structure it, and sign it. And we're really excited to see how more AI native workflows are going to start allowing agents to structure and sign data, and how verifiable data can actually use to improve just the security and the overall trust that we can start building in the decentralized ecosystem. So agents can also participate and do better, faster with us.
I agree. Yeah, I think verifiable also like training data is something super important. I've been contributing a lot around A004 and kind of like, let's say, agent registry. So I think actually the DID side is super important right now. I'm also excited to see what also like you guys have been working on during this time. Jacob, you wanna go next on the Solidity side? I see there like an amazing bicycle, but let's jump into Solidity first.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about that the biking some other day. Yeah, I'm Jacob. I've been around for quite a while as well. Back in the days, I was also working on actually scaling layer 1 with the Raiden network. So there was payment channels back in 2016 to 20 or something like that. We believed in the same ideas as what Friederike was explaining. So I think that it's nice to hear that it's coming back, and that they, with the easy, is trying to kind of achieve some of these goals that we initially set out to solve. But now I'm working on Solidity as the DevRel, part of the Argo collective, which is a spin-out from the Ethereum Foundation that happened around 2 years ago. And we are doing Solidity as the most known thing, and then we have a couple of other tools like Sourcify, Act, which is for formal verification, Fay, another smart contract language. We have SDBug and HEVM, so a bunch of tools around writing smart contract and making sure that they're secure. And I think we're getting the applied in the Octant round for Solidity, since we also need to ensure that we have sustainable runway, so that we can continue to maintain and develop the language that so many people use and rely on for whatever smart contracts that they are writing and deploying.
Sweet, thank you, Jacob. Excited to hear more about it, and we had a bit of a sneak preview during demo day about all the upgrades that are coming, so that's also going to be interesting in what relationship it has to the new way of building that's with AI maybe. So Andrew, let's go over to you. Tell us about Remix and yourself.
Hi, I'm Andrew Vermouth, head of partnerships at Remix, the most widely used online IDE for learning Solidity, educating others, plenty of other languages that are now incorporated into Remix. We have been spun out from the Ethereum Foundation for about a year now, almost exactly. And our team lead, Jan, has been working on Remix since 2015 within EF. So when we spun out, we our mandate was to continue as a public good, essential Ethereum public good and wider Web3 ecosystem public good. And shortly thereafter, we kind of started incorporating our AI tools first as an AI assistant. We then released our MCP and connected to a whole bunch of different protocol and L2 endpoints. And now, just today or last week, we launched our V2, which is incorporates a lot more of the premium AI models. And today we are launching a kind of subscription service to defray the cost of our AI, because our mandate is to really democratize AI use for everyone in the world who wants to use it, not just those in the elite tech elite countries and highly connected developed countries. Our main user base is in the global south. It's India is our leading country for users. I think India surpassed the US in our user base about beginning of 2025. Before that, it was always the US. We always say DeFi has been kind of mastered by our users and our bots and scammers that have and degens that have taken it up. So we really want to promote use cases in global resilience, in healthcare, infrastructure, built environment, and so we're kind of trying to facilitate that now through all of our skills modules and our connections. And we've just launched a boot camp, a virtual boot camp with Encode Club. Everybody is free to join. It's going now. Just had a talk from Chainlink CRE yesterday, which is really cool. ZK Verify will be speaking on Wednesday about connecting all of these dots together to create dApps and business cases for global resilience.
Exciting. And yeah, Andrew, this is one. I mean, Remix was basically like how every developer started in the space, learning Solidity, right? Playing out with like all the Solidity versioning, testing out the first smart contract. So I think, yeah, not the fact that you guys been in the space for like since the start, but also the edtech side, the fact that you're also still here, you're also pushing the entire kind of like, education narrative and partner up with awesome companies is amazing. And I think also like, when you bring also like a lot of like AI and LLM discovery structure on the table, like there is also a lot of like integration you can do with specifically with Remix. So that's exciting. Let's actually kick it off. So this live stream is actually like the title is funny. I wanted to ask you why, Nico, but I really like it. Ethereum builders on AI steroids, right? So it's basically like kind of saying we are kicking off and accelerating the entire kind of developer and builder journey. And almost like everyone right now, I mean, this is not new. Everyone is kind of vibe coding their ways, building their own tooling to automate things, to kind of build different kind of integration. And I think like, on the Ethereum side, people are definitely like, we see that a lot in hackathons, right? And I really like, like a company like ETH Global that started to kind of push different categorization, because the fact that you can build so fast, distribution is even what matters the most, right? But let's focus a bit on the Ethereum building journey side. And I kind of wrote it down in the next 2 years, but I think it's mostly like 6 to 8 months. But what is kind of like one thing that you think AI completely automate right now in the Ethereum development journey? I also like think about you, Friederike, when we're speaking about account abstraction and builder abstraction, right? Right now you can literally like start to use other tech SDK for also the abstraction. You can have different integration. You can have verification modules with EAS. Like, let's talk a bit about, right? If you need to kind of like pick one single kind of like a journey of why and what actually in the Ethereum development AI changed completely, what would this be? Feel free to chime in. These are open questions.
I think one thing.
Well, I guess sorry, you go, Bryce.
Go ahead, Friederike. I think one thing that is fundamentally changing and something that we should really lean more into is how there are very talented engineers in the Ethereum ecosystem and beyond that have been around for a while, that understand smart contracts and what it means to build in a decentralized way. But there's also a huge group of developers that have once looked at blockchain and have since left blockchain, because Ethereum smart contracts and just smart contract development can be very cumbersome and difficult. And so I think right now what this presents is it's a really unique opportunity for us to really rethink how we can reskill existing engineers to become, Remix has been extremely helpful for everyone during their development journey. So how does Remix participate, what it means to be like a builder in today's world, and to really reskill a lot of external engineers to pull them back into like what it means to build on Ethereum. And it's very similar to other like skilled trades right now and how they're using AI to reduce dropout rates when they're trying to learn how to do a new trade. So I think Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is honestly just education and accessibility to external devs and figuring out how to make that easier.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean,
if I can jump in here. Okay, just you can go, Andrew. It's fine.
I was just going to say, Remix having been this Web 2 to Web 3 builders platform, heading more toward reaching out to non-builders even. We went through this whole no code kind of hype back in 2021. As Francesco was saying, AI enabled verification tools are really, to me, those are going to be the things that that change the game toward non-builders being able to actually build stuff that works and verify that it's actually working.
And I think, Andrew, one thing is that people realize that there is a big difference between production code and kind of like more testing code. I think, I want to let now like Friederike and Jacob like tell what they're thinking about it. But yeah, just want to say that.
You can go further here.
Cool. Yeah, I think all of us have become a lot more productive, right? So kind of one of my favorite pastimes now is comparing AI setups, because everyone does something slightly differently. It's always so satisfying to kind of see what they do and kind of and see kind of like how you could leverage it for yourself. The fact of the matter is, so did the hackers, right? So kind of where kind of you needed to have a team of pretty educated people, you now just have to have a bunch of Claude tokens, right? And so kind of being Team Blue in some sense, yeah, so basically, yeah, kind of things have gotten easier for us too. But kind of there's an inbuilt asymmetry here, right? Kind of as Team Blue, kind of you have to build things in a flawless manner. Especially if Team Red is also on steroids and can kind of find any vulnerability in a matter of days or weeks, right? And I think kind of like that's what we've seen the last couple of weeks, months, probably the last year, kind of AI aided exploits of DeFi protocols. Kind of every other week there was something. And I think we fundamentally kind of need to think about how we engineer solutions on chain that are run in a censorship resistant environment, right? Kind of because nothing in real life is censorship resistant. So kind of like if you're on your banking interface and you try to send $20,000 to a Nigerian bank address, they will call you up, Nico, and they will say, hey, Nico, you sure you want to send $20,000 to this Nigerian bank account? And you will say, well, yes, this is my friend. I email him all the time and he's a prince. And then they will say, Nico, maybe you should rethink that, right? So this is something that kind of probably around 1 million people who use Ethereum regularly, that they've gotten used to. The fact that things are irreversible and kind of like when you're scammed, you're just scammed. You don't even report it to the police anymore. But this is very much not a user experience that will work for the larger population, right? Kind of like if you take it from 1 million users to 8 billion users, kind of the remaining 7,999,000,000, they will want a hotline to call when they're being scammed. They will not want censorship resistance, and kind of censorship resistance in an age where AI exploits are so ripe. I think kind of like we have to think about how to defend ourselves properly against this. And kind of I would posit that kind of like there need to be a number of defenses. So kind of one is as little complexity as possible. So kind of like if you look at smart contracts out there in even, for instance, say kind of Aave v4. Okay, so Aave v4 is 2,500 lines of code. It's kind of code, and I'm not counting the comments here. Okay, so kind of like no comment. Code is 2,500 lines, and not that kind of like Aave has excellent engineers and kind of like everything's been audited many times and so on. But kind of you can't tell me there's not a single vulnerability in there. Kind of it's likely there might be something somewhere, right? And kind of like same goes for every other protocol. So kind of reducing complexity markedly. I think this is defense one, and then defense two is looking at what actually should happen on Ethereum L1. Okay, so kind of with the Ethereum Economic Zone, we can now have zones that de facto extend Ethereum, but that kind of engage in a trade-off on that dimension regarding censorship resistance and security. So kind of you could have a network that synchronously composes with Ethereum, but still puts security first and says, okay, we will kind of run a service like Fileax or kind of something decentralized where kind of like you have some reasonable assurance that someone's checking what's going on, or where you can, for instance, as a developer, kind of in natural language specify what your smart contract is meant to do, and then kind of like if kind of what's actually being executed markedly deviates from that, say you have an infinite mint bug or something, then that kind of the sequencer just doesn't include that transaction until it's kind of actually kind of followed up with you or someone that kind of is in charge on that smart contract, right? So kind of like, obviously there shouldn't be kind of like a benevolent dictatorship and so on, but I think saying we don't want to trade away any bit of censorship resistance against any measure of security, I think that's probably not a good trade-off for most people. So I think, I mean, as much as anyone else, I really love AI because it's made me 10 times more productive, but it's also made me worry a lot more about kind of like these setups that we're building where you can transact a lot of money with a push of a button, and kind of you can also transact it in the wrong pockets if you kind of push too hastily or don't read ABI kind of so.
I mean, at the end, Friederike, is also a question of who is actually due diligence the latest like code push, right? And we're always coming up around education and having still senior developers and actually like people that actually manage to have production code for the past years. One example, like we have so many like open PRs right now. They're literally like, I don't know, PR slop or something like that, right? That you actually need to review, and it takes actually longer to actually review things. I would love to also knowing a bit like Jacob, if you see also like this quality of actually like smart contract slop going out, especially for like production code for like PRs, even bigger project, because I feel like there will be coming a time, it's happening already, right? But there is a time that also people will start to review less and actually like start to approve faster, because I mean there is no time to review, but it would be also you need to also be very careful, right? And yeah, you can AIDD in the same time and having double check, but I think there is a lot of things that are still missing.
Yeah, for sure. Like, first of all, I agree with most or a lot of the things Friederike said on this topic, but I also say like I'm a little bit on the fence of what Bryce and Andrew maybe said in the beginning. Like I don't think that we should focus on having like AI at least not write our smart contracts. It's great for prototyping. You can get something to iterate over quicker, but you really have to be careful from that point on, I think. As Friederike kind of said, like you need to only be wrong once, right? And the attackers or the bad actors, they have the same tools as you do, and they just need to be right once, basically, right? But like if you're wrong one time, it has very severe consequences. And it doesn't really have any consequences to the hackers if they don't manage to be wrong one time on your project. So I think that's kind of like it's a really tough game, and like the amount of time, like I once worked on a project where we were like, okay, we're done, we're ready to go on mainnet in 3 months. We went on mainnet 3 years later, because it took 2 years before we felt comfortable that the contracts were actually ready for mainnet and for people's money to be put into it. So I think like of course you can build a cool project over a weekend at a hackathon, but from that point to actually going into production, it's a whole different thing. And that last bit, I think, is something where the AI can still be helpful, but you really need to have a lot of like manual thinking, setting up, designing the tests that should be run on your smart contracts, using, I don't know, a tool like Philex that Friederike mentioned, because I used to work there, so it's nice to hear that name being shouted out. But there's so much to do, and there's such a big difference from sitting down and throwing some prompt into Remix and then having a working prototype to actually putting this stuff online, on chain, and having people put their money into it. And yeah, then going the level further down to answer your question, Francesco, a little bit. When we work on Solidity, the language, we of course use AI, but like it's not a lot, because we really have to be careful. Like any small bug that we introduce to, let's say, the compiler can have catastrophic consequences for a lot of people. And we also see a lot of bug reports coming in that we've never had to deal with as many security issues and bug reports as we do now. It's taking up a significant amount of our time over the last 6 months or so. We have probably weekly reports where most of them are non-issues or minor issues that you could reach in some very, very obscure code path that no one would ever actually write, but we still have to look through all of them because there could be something. And we did have a high severity one back in February, I believe. And most of the things coming in, they come in because it's some, like, people are just running the AI robots, agents against code bases out there. So of course, stuff is found. Some of it is valid, but we also spend a lot of time on things that are not valid, which ultimately slows down the process of improving what we are working on, which is also a sad thing to some extent. So it's like from where we are sitting, it's definitely like a two-edged sword, where we can see the good parts of it. There are things in our daily life and working day that is definitely improved by AI, but it's also an enemy. And we do see a lot of these AI slop PRs coming in as well. Like someone's just like looking through the list of, I don't know, we have thousands of, or I think we have 600 open issues, right? So we just say to AI, find an issue, work on it, open a PR, and yeah, then we have to review that as well. So, and yeah, every line that goes into the compiler, we have to very carefully look at it and think, what will this change mean? We cannot just review faster. And on the contrary, I think we are actually reviewing slower because we cannot guarantee that the person who opened the PR actually understands what is in the PR.
Or the bot that opened the PR, yeah.
Yeah, most likely it is. We just had recently, so like now we added that you have to sign off that if you had an AI assist you, you should sign off on that, and you should also sign off that you understand everything that the PR does. But it's clear that people don't always know what's going on.
I'd like to say I wasn't suggesting that giving up work to AI. We have done that, and to our detriment. I was basically saying that we are going to have AI be able to verify and cross-check a lot of the slop that now occurs because the workload has increased for humans. I mean, even my workload just maintaining a website that where slop is introduced when an update happens out of the blue, and then you go and look and it's like, how did that happen? Well, like that was, nobody ever asked to change that, you know? So I'm just saying that what we're trying to do is build more and more sub agents that cross-reference each other, because we're going to have AI help us, you know, rather than, you know, continue to hinder us, and have AI be able to at least verify some of the slop and correct it itself.
Yeah, but even the memory resilience, right? Go for it, Friederike.
Yeah, 100%. So kind of this is also how we internally use AI a lot now. So kind of AI actually does significantly contribute to our code base. So around 40% of the tickets that we have are actually routinely done by AI, and kind of humans really are the quality assurance loop here. So kind of obviously we have orchestration setups where kind of other AIs also check against this, but kind of things never get put into production without human eyes on it. And also the AI is instructed to reduce complexity as much as possible, because kind of like if you look at AI code, often it's arcane and has many loops, and kind of like it's kind of writing simply, kind of like the thing everyone learned in engineering school. So kind of like how to structure your code. And kind of like this is this is not a known hallmark of AI code. But obviously it can be instructed otherwise, right?
I think that's really where attestations need to play a bigger role, especially with these autonomous systems, to be able to sign off on the work that they've done. And then from this, you can start to build a reputation system that signals like which sources actually produce safe code, or who actually attested that the code is safe for production in a more decentralized way. And to talk about the comment that you made, Jacob, I think it's really important. I think we've all seen that even though we're gaining a lot of speed with AI, we still need to move quite slowly when we're building in public, especially in high stakes domains where you're handling people's money, or if there's a risk where there's like some sort of money transfer. But I don't think that the bar has changed at all. I think the bar is still, we've always had the highest bar of like, how do we actually keep the code quality extremely secure? I think that the coordination around how fast we can improve the code bases based off of new findings and stuff, there's this like huge coordination sludge that we're all feeling to be able to like move at the speed that people are submitting PRs because we are so open. But I think the bar is still high, so we need to figure out better ways to actually signal what good actually looks like before, you know, teams like you are actually manually reviewing things.
Yeah, of course, but that's I think that was a little bit my issue in the beginning, was like we talked about how, for example, I think Remix is amazing, but it is the entry point. It is the beginner tool to learn how to write smart contracts, and if they do it by like AI, they don't have a way themselves to kind of verify the quality of the work of the agents. That's where one of my main concerns come in.
Sure.
Right? There's a difference between having someone who's been writing smart contracts for 10 years, using and very precisely instructing his agent to what he wants it to write, and then he can review it in a couple of minutes and see this is exactly what I would have written myself. But that's not something we get with, let's say, beginners writing code or generating code in Remix or any other IDE for that matter. So that's where I'm a little bit worried about getting the review process and making sure the quality actually is good, correctly down.
Is this, I think, Bryce, also one thing is the track record of like the contributions, right? Not just the verifiability, but I think also the track record that kind of like either like this person or organization or even account just contributed valuably on the code base. But one question is like, is this not kind of already solved like around kind of like web through code base maintenance? I'm just thinking about also like how these kind of like words can converge around verifiable code, right? it's an interesting part. Like I see a lot of also like A004 effort and like agent registry effort, but also in one side, also asking myself if also Web2 specific AI narrative are not converging, especially on the DID side. It would be hard even like for like general like Web3 contribution to move in a more like broader spectrum and really onboard a new line of builders. Yeah.
I think existing industries can often overlook some of the benefits of blockchain and cryptography, like verifiable timestamps and everything else. And there are, like, in the CI/CD pipeline, there are like a lot of verification checks that do exist. You know, more deterministic ones, you can check that all the tests pass and everything else. But really, where an attestation can play a larger role is when you actually want to start building a reputation or knowing like who signed the claim. So like if a verification check has passed, who authored the code, and how do you start building, especially in an open and decentralized world, how do we start building a reputation system around where this code was authored and what it actually means to be not just like that test pass, but what if the tests are wrong? How do you actually know that the code meets a standard that builders you respect or trust also believe that it's at the quality?
It's tricky, yeah. It's tricky also because people also invest the time and effort, but also there are, even I know a lot of like senior developers that at the end, you know, you have time constraint. You just said it right, Andrew, that also like a lot of also senior developer right now have 10x the workload before they were actually delegating PR reviews and specific things, right? But now you actually need to be the one truly going carefully through all this. So I feel in some sense, you still find hard to DD because you eventually will use also like AI to do the first checks, right? And when you were speaking about production code, yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that
I
this
would
conversation
say- okay,
only
can I-
happens.
Okay,
Sorry, Jacob.
I-
No,
I
I just
just-
wanted to mention that only happens in like with our type of code, right? That it's like, as you said, Jacob, like very high stakes. Like
High stakes,
Web2 builders are just don't care that much about it. So this is super relevant. Sorry, go ahead, Jacob.
No, I agree with you're right. Like if you're just building some, I don't know, Web2 DApp, not DApp, we call it them. They call them apps. I forgot. Then yeah, you can pretty much just move as fast as you want. I forgot my other point, but one thing that from our side that is also interesting, we talked a little bit about like verifying the code, but we also like, I think, looking in the direction of what language an LLM would like to kind of like which smart contract language is nice for an LLM to work with. And one of the things we're currently doing is we're working on what we call Core Solidity, which is kind of like, say, the next iteration of Solidity, and it has a bunch of nice features that Solidity does not have, but that let's say a modern programming language of 2026 kind of should have. And one of them is something like pattern matching and abstract data types, where it basically means that you can, like, the compiler will catch a whole kind of category of bugs while compiling instead of once deployed. So this kind of will make it easier for the LLM to iterate faster through the code and make sure that like the compiler will give warnings that you forgot to cover a specific case or something like that. So it is something we are aware of for, let's say, future versions of Solidity, that it is also more friendly or gives like some better guarantees for generating code. So I just thought I wanted to mention that because it's also an interesting approach to try to solve some of these problems that we talked about earlier.
It'd be interesting to hear from you, Jacob, like how you think skills libraries, we've loaded ETH skills into Remix, and we're doing a lot more skill generation for Web 2 or sectors outside Web 3 that could relate to Solidity code in some way. Is Core Solidity kind of approaching that kind of concept?
I wouldn't say that it's something we are actively doing there, but we are talking with players in the ecosystem that do education and stuff like that, and we'll probably offload that to them, if you mean like the skill creation. But yeah, some of my early experiments already with Core Solidity, actually we get pretty good results from letting an AI try to write some of the existing libraries from OpenCV or simple smart contracts. So I'm surprised that it actually works that well without having real training data. So I think that's great. And I think the iteration I spoke about before with like the pattern matching and like the type system that we have redesigned, I think that makes it better suited for LLMs as well, which we kind of have to at least think into the equation when designing new languages these days.
Cool.
One thing, Andrew, I think what got very easier are all the kind of extra tooling connections. Like I see people spinning WAGMI libraries, very easy. We're seeing also people especially when you the how do you say the anatomy. I was giving this DevRel presentation back in the days to devs, the anatomy of a DApp, right? You have connectors, integration, and specific things. People end up abstracting the way. I think when people want to leverage some embedded wallets, boom, they're just using some kind of specific SDK. When you actually want to build quickly a connector, you just use some kind of MetaMask SDK or any dynamic or privy out there, right? I think this tooling has become very you can really spin up dApps easier, or at least abstracting the way for your user. I think even embedding privacy. People are always thought as extra cautious and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna build this on NOR, or I want to actually have specific ZK for, I don't know, some encryption on top of that. But right now it's much easier to build this integration through different tooling. And the second part, I think one thing is obviously manually coding your own way with AI through prompting, babysitting prompting. There is all these kind of names. But I think the other way is when you actually start to prompt looping, orchestrator management, and I think to our discussion before, when we do shared memory, losing context, I think this is one of the biggest kind of things that need to be worked on. And we are testing a lot also stuff building your own brain for context delivery when you're training in the future new agents for that. But I think also first need to be solved really ground processes, right? How things are actually due diligence, how you educate better through fundamentals, because I think also there is a lot of vibe coding kind of emerging user coming into this space, and I think also we need to make sure that we also set up these fundamentals, but in the same time you don't want to kind of you want to make people also abstract in the way, but in the same time you also want to understand. So I don't know, I think we will get also in a very focused way to do things.
Yeah, it's inevitable. People coming in who don't know anything, just gotta build it. Let's do it.
Yes.
One other question I have for everybody. We just heard during this session that Claude is actually down right now.
Yeah.
Made me want to ask about everybody's thoughts about local LLMs. We just set up Remix Desktop with enabling Olama and local models, and it just feels like local and open source models might be on the rise, especially after today. I don't know how serious this Claude is. Down, but
as we wrote here, millions of IT departments on fire now, right? So that's a good one. But I think on my case, personally also pushing bunch of orchestrator. I think running, it depends on the use case. I think you need to have a solid orchestrator defining specific use cases, and actually is delegating the task to either local or through other. We need to assume obviously local LM will keep it up, but not everyone will have still a strong computing power. But I think 80% of actually operational operational savings are done also with like basic LLM, right? And I think the trickiest part is the easy delegation between tasks, between local and more online. But I would love to know all you guys thought here.
There's another pattern that's interesting to me right now. OpenRouter released a new API called the Fusion API.
Oh,
the intent behind it was to allow multiple LLMs to pursue a similar goal and then have essentially a judge kind of determine the best output. But essentially what it's doing is it's trying to up-level the skill of each of the LLM's outputs. But I think there's a pattern underneath that where it's important to just not have dependencies on any one single LLM. And I think as teams start to become more dependent on Anthropic and some of the larger frontier models, people are going to start to pull back and realize like, oh wait, like when am I going to like really start feeling this type of rent seeking, you know, with these larger frontier models, and when does like local LLMs make sense? But I can't go to local LLMs because I think I'm getting a performance trade-off when I don't think that's going to be the case long term. So
yeah, we see that with Cursor when they're doing agent mode, they're actually designing specific things. But the question, Bryce, is like, who is the responsibility for this? Is it the open router responsibility? So organization routing specific LLMs is actually like the end user is the orchestrator, or is actually the user defining which use case they want to route to, right? Because at the end, it depends also like the cost and the budget that you want to spend to drive a specific result.
I think you should be the conductor of your train, you know, and you should determine like which path you want to go down. I think you can default to providers that are doing that, like OpenRouter, but ultimately it's your responsibility. And I think the pattern that is being pursued is interesting. And so just figuring out how to make it work for your use case.
Yeah.
Sweet. Anyone want to chime in on this before I ask for some closing remarks? Go for it, Friederike.
I can't believe we are already 1 hour.
So, I mean, the AI equivalent of not your keys, not your crypto is not your weights, not your brain, right? So kind of as if you kind of outsource kind of all your data as training data to kind of the large LLMs, kind of building up some capability in-house that won't be leading edge, but probably 6 to 8 months behind that, kind of you can probably cover 80%, 90% of what you're doing with your in-house capabilities, and then kind of use the more powerful models kind of as and when you need them. And kind of the question kind of like, how do you decide when you need them? Well, you decide whether you need them if the output you get on your local models is not good enough, right? Kind of like that should be the ultimate deciding factor. And I think we will also be pushed to this economically, because currently most AI usage plans are not sustainable for the AI companies, right? Kind of like they're losing money on every query. So kind of prices will inevitably go up, and we will have to kind of see what we can do locally. Kind of there won't kind of, you won't be able to kind of prompt your AI indefinitely about things that you're not willing to pay for. So
yeah, I would also, if I can just quickly, I also think it goes hand in hand, like running your models locally also goes better hand in hand with the whole like idea behind blockchains, right? Like running stuff locally, having many nodes running. And I think that's also worth mentioning and worth fighting for. Like running that node at home for 7 years or 6 years, I don't know when they launched. And I think they're also in the round actually. So shout out to that node. But like the whole idea behind that, like taking your power back to yourself and not relying on Claude, who's down right now, I think that's a huge upside as well, and something people should be doing, even though it requires a little bit more maintenance on your side.
Great. Go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go for it.
I think we're really close. This conversation has gone so fast. Like, I can't believe we're hitting the 1 hour mark. Like, I'm regretting not scheduling this for 2 hours, because this conversation was
should do it again, though.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to do it again for sure. But yeah, to respect everyone's time, I would love to ask you for some final remarks. As you know, all these projects are participating in Epoch 12. You can go to Octant.app to vote for them, and I would love to hear from you. Maybe what's coming next for the project, and maybe what would you do with the funding that you will receive from Octant, so that people understand what they're voting for. Friederike, would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're building this composability layer for all of Ethereum land that kind of lets us glue kind of those fragmented silos back together, so that it actually feels like one ecosystem again. And obviously, the eventual goal is to kind of to abstract all of this away from first the users and then also the dApps. So kind of they shouldn't have to understand where kind of components live, just like you don't have to understand whether the networks you connect, kind of whether the nodes you connect to on the internet, kind of what kind of server operating system they run. And it should be exactly the same on Web3, the web of money. Yeah, so basically, if you want the composability back that we used to have, without losing all of the nice things that we kind of build in between, easy should be your vote.
Nice.
Thank you, Friederike. Francesco, I know you need to leave exactly on point, and it's something important.
Yes.
So I wanna give you the opportunity to say bye before the rest of the project.
Oh yeah, no, thanks so much. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much, Nico, for hosting this. I would my closing remark is mostly like, build garlays for your own agent, or use something that's already garlays, especially when you're actually leveraging different kind of CLI out there, right? And yeah, garlays could be specific for like privacy, for specific to encryption model, even like assuming what models are using. So make sure actually you know what you're using, and test out and show everyone what you kind of like build. I think about advocating for what you're building is super strong. And thanks for Octant for making this live stream possible. Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Francesco, for being such a great co-host today. Have a good one. See you on the next one. All right, let's continue with a round of closing remarks. Andrew, what about Remix?
Yeah, I'd just say, as we at Remix launch, these frontier AI models for our users, and the ability to pass through our own API and hook up a user's API if they already have, a subscription, and enable those local models through Remix Desktop. We're trying to like have that decision making by the user, and at the same time being funded by Octant is going to be vital for us to create those safety guardrails through these sub-agents and orchestrators that we have to build to keep our users and the entirety of Web3 safe and spread to more sectors.
There you have it. Thank you, Andrew. Jacob, let's go over to you.
Yes, I think the funding we get in Octant, we will hopefully get in Octant. We will use on just on tokens to bytecode the next version of Solidity. No, jokes aside, we will use it to make sure that we can stay up to date and not be too overwhelmed with all the things coming at us with AI and whatnot, and to make sure that we can maintain and develop the language that so many people rely on, and also make sure that it stays, that it gets up to date as a modern programming language. So that's our main focus and goal.
Sweet, thank you. And last but not least, Bryce, what's with EAS?
Thanks for hosting the space, Nico. The theme for EAS for the past several years has always centered around help builders build faster, and I don't think that's changed. And what we're trying to do is really make sure that our documentation and just the way that people understand the primitive is very simple to use, especially for agents too. We want to be more discovered, like when people have a use case that is attestation forward, that people are reaching for blockchain primitives like EAS to be able to do that without it being a super scary thing. And so we're really focused on really just improving how we talk about the protocol and how easy it is to start using it and providing more examples of what it means. The protocol itself is like elegantly very simple. So we just want to make sure that our language is also reflecting that.
Sweet, amazing. You've heard our guests. Please go to Octant.app, vote for their amazing projects. It's truly like amazing to be supporting you guys. Your work is amazing. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Thank you so much for coming on to this live stream as well. Always such an interesting conversation with you. And thank you to our audience who tuned in and were interested in hearing this conversation that was mind-blowing to me. So yeah, I won't keep you here any longer. I really appreciate you. I hope we can do this again. It was such an interesting conversation. Maybe in 5 months from now when AI evolves to the next level.
What's changed? Thanks very much,
yeah.
Nico.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.